here we go. You're gonna be famous. Okay. So I'm recording this interview. My name is Hunter Ryan. I'm affiliated with Illinois State University with the Center for Community Engagement and Service Learning. I'm interviewing today, November 11th, 2017. I'm interviewing Herbert Zehr. And right now we are in the McLean County Nursing Home. Okay. So I know I've asked you already, but would you tell me again where you were born and what year? And then can you tell me about your parents? About what your parents did, their occupations, their jobs?
What about after basic training?
Went to movies, roller skating, stuff like that.
What did you do regularly as your MOS?
I was born in Illinois.
Oh, sorry. What did you do as your
I think
your,
McLean County.
military?
Didn't really have any.
July 4th, 1925.
What do you mean going to school? Going to school for the military?
I graduated from Chinook High School
And how long did
in
that last?
1945.
2 or 3 months, I don't remember exactly.
I went directly to the Army. Basic training, basic training.
I sat back
Camp Joseph T. Robinson,
for recruiting.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
For how long did you do that for?
A couple months, something like that. I met my officer.
What about your parents?
Navigator, bombardier.
What can you tell me about your parents?
My dad was a farmer, all his life a farmer.
Put me in the tail.
My mother was a school teacher.
Can you tell me a little about your experience there?
We flew all over the Gulf of Mexico, up to the Canadian border and back, up to Denver and back, and stuff like that.
How was the actual experience in the plane? What was your
In 1945,
aircraft?
I answered a newspaper ad soliciting for help.
Were there any times you actually had to do that?
We did it on our way to Korea 2 different times. 2 times they wouldn't fire because it was 44 degrees below zero.
I applied for help and a clerk in a jewelry store. Imagine me a farm boy. Get out of the Army. I'm going to work in a jewelry store. I thought I'd be there for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up 43 years there.
43 years at a jewelry store.
43 years.
Wow,
Air Force Base, Okinawa.
that's nice.
Do you have any memories?
Here in town, in Bloomington.
Anything that stands out?
Not really.
Herb, did you have any siblings growing up? Did you have any brothers or sisters?
What?
Did you have any siblings, any brothers or sisters growing up?
You didn't do that in the Air Force.
One sister.
So what kind of service did you provide in the Air Force?
She's got to be.
Say that again.
What kind of service did you provide in the Air Force?
Just going with the crew.
You got to be 80 years old at least.
And where would they go, for example, like missions?
And one brother,
We
Phil.
went up over Korea 3 times. We just went up to the ADIZ zone, turned around and went back to Okinawa.
Have you ever seen combat?
No.
What kinds of friendships and camaraderies did you form while serving?
Well, most of them,
So Herb, can you tell me what branch of the military you served in?
Were there any people
Army.
that really
In the
stuck
Army.
out to you?
And you were drafted in, correct?
there was one person, or another crew that I went around with.
So can you tell me a little bit about training camp?
That person.
What that was like?
Training camp,
Mm-hmm.
Friendly to be around.
I took regular infantry training.
Mm-hmm.
And it was rugged.
Rugged.
Be raw.
You ever been in contact with him after?
One letter.
Sometimes it matters 15 or 20 miles a day with a full pack on their back.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
I wrote letters.
It's been
They
strong.
wrote to me.
Did they feed you well?
So I know
Did you
this
eat
is
good?
cool, but were there, is there anything you did for recreation when you were off duty?
Well, I went to
About as bad as ever.
souvenir places.
About as bad as right here.
Souvenirs.
This food here is stinko.
Oh no. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that.
I had a camera. I took pictures. And then went to Dad.
So do you remember leaving Illinois to go to Arkansas? What did that look like? Did you get on did the Army bus you down from up north to down south, or how did you arrive in Arkansas?
When the war ended.
I was in Texas.
So you were, when did you return home?
They just had me orders in here. The orders said to go to Arkansas. I didn't have a choice in the matter.
Of course.
Or do you remember how returning home was? How returning home was for you?
Well, it bothered my stomach for a while.
So Herb, how was it adapting to being in the military? Was it difficult for
How
you?
were you received
Yeah.
by your family?
This little farm boy.
your
Farm
community?
boy.
Fine.
Did you have to readjust to civilian life?
Okay.
Can you tell me a little about that?
Well, I'd go to various meetings in Evanville. And I would almost feel
What were some of the things you remember about the new lifestyle of being in the Army?
I didn't do that.
Was it a big change for you?
Have you remained
I didn't have made no choice in my own.
circlet?
They told me when to go to bed, to when to get up, to when to eat, to where to eat. And mess all that here.
How often would you do that?
On Sunday you go to chapel. Saturday night you go to town, you go to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Well, he'd tell me where he'd been. He'd been all over the world. He was 18 years older than me. So he'd been,
That all seems so long.
been to Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, England. He'd been all over. As a pilot.
It all seems so long ago.
Going back to when you first enlisted, do you remember how leaving for basic training was?
What?
How leaving for your boot camp was?
It was a long time ago, Herb.
Where was boot camp? Where was your initial training at?
I was in Texas. Randolph Field, San Antonio, Texas, not Randolph.
Do you want to take a break from these questions?
Can't think of the name of the base, but it's right close by there.
Were there any memorable experiences you had in basic training? Anything you'd like to share?
Not really.
Did you make any friends in
Yes, someone here,
Not many.
or I lost my hearing aid. I do wear one, about 6 months without one.
It's a long time.
Very difficult. And they won't buy me, they won't buy me one.
Veterans organizations right now?
Does Philip know you need another one? Your son?
American Legion. I think
Does your son Philip know that you're missing a hearing aid?
Oh, yes.
No.
Can you tell me a little about what you would do with the American Legion?
nothing. That's great.
He tried to get to replace it.
What have you
I received a hearing aid one day, and the next day it was gone. That's that
What
fast.
have you done since separating
They
from
wouldn't
the
replace it.
Oh, I fought for 2 years because my dad had a heart attack.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
It
Herbert.
seemed right, doesn't it?
Worked at a factory for 37
No, it doesn't.
I hear real well with the hearing aid. I hear very well.
How did your military experiences affect your life?
Not much.
Is it okay if I keep asking you about these questions? Yeah? Herb, can you tell me some of the things you remember about being in Japan?
You don't use it.
When you said you went to Japan after basic training?
What about
What are things you remember about being there?
schedules or anything like that?
I don't understand.
Like, what am I trying to find? Is there anything from the military that you learned that you use in your regular, like, in
Well,
your
the
post-military life?
vehicle all drove on the other side of the road.
I said, it doesn't do any good to learn about machine guns at home.
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
I don't like the war.
Well, most of the villagers
What
had
about the military?
a cow. A cow has a cart. Not a horse, but a cow.
They told you what to do, when to do it, and everything.
Cows are strong.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this video? This interview?
Well, I enlisted to get out of the Korean War,
Japanese customs.
but I ended up over the top of
They
Korea.
all took your shoes off.
Anyway,
And
but there wasn't any battle.
I said, outside the door with shoes.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or anything you'd like to say?
I don't know. I had a good life. After the military.
You didn't like the military experience very much?
No.
How come?
Herb, do you remember any of your instructors while you were in Japan? Any of your superiors?
What?
Do you remember any of your superiors while you were in Japan? Any of the names of your officers?
Major OKeefe. Major OKeefe. Oh, I remember him. He was a good Joe.
What do you remember about him? Do you remember where he was from?
What do you think?
We're trying to see how long the video was.
Either way, we're okay. You know what I mean? We don't have to-
You said he was a good guy? Major O'Keefe? He was a good superior?
That was easy duty.
Military besides
Just biding our time so we could get you home.
I was away from home. And that was, but I did see a lot of things I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been in it.
Would you like to tell a little about those things on your review?
No. Everybody else did the same thing.
Still get to share your experience. It's still good to share your experience.
Well, I didn't know what it was.
Herb, did you see combat?
Been to Wake Island,
I did not see combat.
been to Okinawa, been to Kwajalein,
Herb, what kind of friendships did you make
been to Tucson, Arizona.
in the military?
What kind?
And the
Friendships, camaraderie
Yeah.
that you had with your fellow servicemen.
You can figure out how long it is.
Longer, I only went to 2 places.
None that I maintained afterwards.
You go to so many.
And different kind of training.
What kind of training did they have? The other two?
One of the pilots had never flown B-29. Every commander had never flown.
Herb, while you were in the military, how did you keep in touch with your family back in Illinois? How did you correspond with people? Frequently? Infrequently? And with whom?
Postcards.
I didn't expect to have to do this, otherwise I wouldn't know how to do it.
Once in a while, a telephone call. Not too often.
Because I don't know if it reached quite half an hour.
Should have stopped it, should have kept it going.
How long were those telephone calls? Were they short or did they last a long time?
Let's see how long it
The telephone calls, were they short calls or were they long calls? Were you able to talk for a long time?
We didn't even
No.
stop it, there's
Oh, sure.
option
Short call.
to have to.
Phone calls and postcards.
It's just taking a second. So like,
So Herb, do you remember when you were off duty? What did you do when you were off duty from service? How did you use your recreation time? Or what activities did you find yourself doing when you were off duty?
We worked from there to go to Little Rock, Arkansas on a weekend. They had
like almost like half the time. So
building stuff, ping pong, and things like that. in the building.
people really can do it, but
We're, the video is at 17 minutes and we need at least 30 to submit it for, the program, for the Library of Congress.
It's also long ago.
Yeah.
Tell us a couple more stories.
Well, we were crew training in Texas.
So Herb,
One of them-
you were in Japan when the war ended?
Yes,
And
Do you remember where?
the gunnery trainer.
Do you remember the name of the base you were at?
The cruise ship opened just before they hit the
Camp Joseph T. Robinson.
Camp Joseph T. Robinson.
Everybody on board was killed.
And that was during your basic training?
How did you get back home?
Crew training.
On a plane? A military plane? Do you remember?
Train.
Train.
To all the places you've been?
And then how were you received when you arrived back home?
A lot of them at least.
Do you remember?
Based in Texas. And I went to
Were
Denver
people there to greet you
for gunnery
when you got back home?
Then I went back to Texas for crew training. I went to Kansas for, to pick up a radio operator.
Do you remember how it was to readjust to civilian life after the military? Was that easy for you, or was that difficult?
For 10 days, with 3 pounds of meat and a survival kit. That was it. No other meat, no other food. We got kind of hungry out there.
Something very difficult.
The aircraft commander.
So here now, this is very difficult for me
They gave us 1 piece,
to try to remember all this stuff.
I understand.
and that was your meat. And I got to where it was smelling.
I understand.
They made the radar operator say,
It's okay, take your time.
"You're alive."
There's no rush. Take your time.
But when they passed it out, everybody was there for their piece, and we ate it.
What about after your, how did the survival training affect you in the military career? Never used it once after? What about after your survival training, what did you do then?
We flew all over the Pacific Ocean, 3 times over Korea. We lost an engine up there once. We flew to Japan.
Can I ask you a few more questions, Herb, or would you like this to be over with? We can end this if you'd like.
We couldn't do anything.
I just have a few more questions.
To Tokyo. We had an airplane.
So, Herb, when you got out of the military, you said you started working at a jewelry store,
There 3 days.
and you ended up working at the jewelry store for 40 years.
But the eggs were good.
That's cool. Do you want to say anything about that? About your life after the military?
And they were bad.
About
No way I could
the
eat.
store you worked at?
And they made sure that there were no
After the military,
in the eggs when they ate them.
I went to work in a jewelry store.
They stunk. But we still ate them.
What was it called? Do you remember the name?
The town, Bloomington,
Do you have any
The-
other,
in Bloomington.
The name of the store?
trips?
Shields.
Shields. Okay.
Just one. When it was 44 degrees below zero. And sheepskin lined boots, sheepskin lined
I
pants,
started out by
heavy flying jacket, full time cap on my head.
doing some repair work.
And
I ended up managing the store.
May West, I put my hands under it to keep warm. And they wanted to turn the heat down in front, as they were sweating, but I was cold. So they didn't turn it down.
So, Herb, can I ask you, how did your time in the military, how did that affect your life outside of it? I know.
We never knew why.
So how did the military affect the rest of your life?
Been to all these different places.
After I got out,
Do you have
it
any?
didn't.
No.
It didn't.
Japan was interesting. There was horns blowing.
I was discharged and I didn't go back.
When they blew a horn, it means stop, we won't hit you. When the Americans got there, when they blew the horn, they meant get out of their way. And they ran over a lot of people. So when they started having Japanese,
What were some of the lessons you learned from being in the military?
they knew what they were doing, and we didn't.
How many times have you been to Japan?
Any life lessons that you took away from your service in the military, in the army?
No, twice, been there twice.
You want to tell me about those times?
Well,
You learn to respect your men, respect your superiors.
building that was saved when they
You
bombed
learn to follow orders.
for the military. Otherwise, most of the city was burned down. because of the fire bombs from the B-29s. Their houses were made of paper and wood. So when the bombs hit, they caught fire and it burned everything to the ground. People jumped in the river to get away from the fire, but they couldn't survive because the fire was burning up all the oxygen. So they couldn't breathe. They killed more people.
Herb, how did your time in the Army, how did that impact your feelings about war in general?
Other locations.
From your perspective, how do you view war currently?
Been to Tampa, Florida. Don't remember the name of the base. Been to West Palm Beach, Florida. Been to Missouri. Another base. We were studying the boom operators on KC-97 tanker. But my dad had a heart attack. So I got out on a hardship discharge.
Just regular discharged when it started. Veterans started coming back from the war. And
What year was
all
that?
shot up.
1954.
You said you've been to Hawaii, right? How's that like?
I wasn't there very long. First time I was there 90 minutes. This time I had to refuel the plane and go on the way to Wake Island. Another 90 minutes on Wake Island. Then we went to Tokyo. I was there 8 days. Waiting for
I hate war.
to go to Okinawa. Our friend finally found a KC-97 cargo plane. So we flew with that.
I'm sorry, Herb.
I hate war.
I'm sorry.
200 miles long, about 50 miles wide. The narrowest place is about 20 miles. I went on
I'm sorry, Herb.
Air Force tour one time. We ended up in a leprechaun. And we saw people standing around with their feet bandaged up, and hands bandaged up, woman with no nose.
I'm sorry, Herb.
Leprosy. And on the way back, they had some regular stops, I think. And there were women alongside.
Is there anything you'd like to say to future generations who will view this interview?
Seashell. So long. And most of the guys couldn't take it home because they wouldn't allow it. But I left my home on a B-29 over Bombay because we rotated home with the Bombay. So nobody knew I had it. So I still have it.
What would you like the people to know who come after you?
What other places have you been to? Because when I asked first, you listed a lot of them.
And then again,
What other places have you been to? When I asked you first, you listed a lot of them.
well, that's most of them. I was in Randolph Field, Texas. That's about 17 miles from San Antonio. That's where you are crew training. And Gus said there'll be no saluting. We're here, got to help each other if you need help. We don't need that saluting. So we didn't do it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Have you made it?
Anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about right now before we end this interview?
Lost track of all of them.
Have you been stationed with any of your friends after training?
No.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I don't think so.
Experiences, any memories that pop out?
I just remember it's terribly hot, Florida.
I'm gonna turn off the camera now. Is that okay?
I was fussing so much, my clothes were wet. And when we landed in Tucson, Arizona,